Hello! Today's video is a special collaboration hosted by Krystals Fantasy. We all had the task of making a demon character using a 17-inch Monster High doll. The artists who participated are Stephoodoll, myself, Lady Dynamite Creates, Krystals Fantasy, Josephine's Creatures, Claudolls, HarleysDollhouse, Diamondza Craft, The Hatter's Dolls, Jackyohhh, and Kay's One-of-a-Kind Factory. Everyone's channel is linked in the description box below. I hope you enjoy our arrangement of extra large demon dolls. For my base, I'll be using this Frankie doll. She was previously loved by a child and has some staining on her face. Like always, I'll be removing the factory paint with 100% acetone. I pour a small amount in a jar and apply it with a cotton pad. If you let it sit for a minute, you can remove quite a bit of the paint in one swipe. Then scrub the rest away with a clean pad. I like to use thread snips for removing the hair. It's a little easier on my hands than scissors for repetitive motions. Of course, you can just use regular scissors you have on hand. These dolls have really hard heads that are known for being difficult to put back on the body after being removed, so I'll be leaving her head on for this repaint. The next step in preparing the doll is to sand off all of Frankie's stitches and to buff the entire body. I pulled her neck bolts out with a pair of pliers. Getting into this tight space with a nail buffer is pretty difficult. So I switched to a metal file. It worked really well for wearing down the metal bits of plastic that were left from her neck bolts too. Now the main body is ready for painting. The arms are made of a type of vinyl, so it's safe to use acetone on them. Acetone will melt hard plastics and can be toxic. Since I won't be removing her head, I want to try to get rid of the stubbly hair another way. I'm basically sanding it into oblivion with my rotary tool. This method was suggested by Dolly Pop. She was originally in the collab, but unfortunately had to drop out. I got some bats, birds, and spiders a few years ago to try to use in customs. My kids have mostly played with them as toys this whole time. But I think it's finally time to make use of some of their parts. I've always sculpted ears from scratch, so it should be interesting to harvest some from this bat. I also want to use some of the wings. Initially, I wanted to have them pop in and out like they do in the original decoration. So I'm trying to copy the whole shape and size. Then I cut them out with my rotary tool. Of course, I went too fast and didn't have great control, so I made the second hole too big. It's been a while since I did a chest mod, 2 years I think. I mix up 2-part epoxy clay to sculpt her new chest with. Mix until you have an even gray tone, then let it rest for 3 to 5 minutes. The clay hardens due to a chemical reaction between the 2 parts, so once you start, you have a limited time to shape things. I don't want to get any clay in the chest joint, so I mask the rib section off with tape. Then I shape the clay globs with various tools, and I use water for smoothing the surface and to blend the clay into the plastic. This clay doesn't shrink as it cures, so I don't have to worry about it cracking or separating from the plastic. When I'm done, I wipe the surface clean so there's no gritty texture on the doll. I'm quickly marking where I want to cut to remove the ears. Then I carefully use my rotary tool to cut the ears. This time I'm going much slower. I think my footage is sped up 4 times here. I no longer felt safe holding the head when I got to the back, so I used a pencil, shoved it into the hole to keep it in place. Some of the plastic melts into kind of a rough swarf. You can pull this off easily after it cools. Now to attach her new ears. Since the bat ear is hard plastic, I'll just use epoxy again as a bridge and to blend it into the head. It didn't want to stick very well to the bat ear, I think because the surface was kind of slippery, but I got it to stay in place with some determination. I'll be making a wig this time. I start by layering cut sheets of cling wrap. Her ears make using one larger sheet impractical. After everything is thoroughly covered, I secure it with a rubber band. For the wig cap, I'm using a dried out wipe. They stretch nicely and absorb the glue well. I cut a small line above her ears so that I can shape the wig cap around them. Then I put everything tight and hold it in place with another rubber band. To make the wig cap retain its shape, I soak it in Elmer's Glue-All. You can use any water-based or PVA glue you have available for this. I spread the glue evenly with a brush. This takes a few coats before the cap is stiff enough not to collapse on itself. After letting it dry for several hours, I draw the part line. Then I mark where I plan to trim the cap. I can clearly see the original hairline, and I mostly follow that. I also draw in some sideburns so the cap won't slide around her ears later. Then I carefully start cutting away the excess material. This is how the finished wig cap looks. After incorporating bat features into the doll, I decided that she would be a mischievous demon of the night. So I want her hair to reflect that. I have this lovely chunky yarn that is made up of shades of midnight, dusky purples, and pastel blues. I thought that it perfectly evoked a night sky. And as usual, when working with yarn, I use the pull or tug method. When I have enough fiber, I start making wefts. I lay down a piece of parchment paper, then pipe out lines of glue. The yarn gets pressed down into this and another layer of glue gets poured over the top. I hold this in place with a ruler and brush the glue out with a silicone sculpting tool. The ruler helps me keep my lines straight, and I just use the sculpting tool instead of a brush because it's easier to clean. After the glue is dry, I brush the wefts out to remove any loose fiber, and then make it soft and shiny with a hair straightener. I process the rest of the yarn this way, and then I can start applying it to the wig cap. To do this, I pour a bit of glue onto the wefts, which I trimmed earlier, and then press them in rows to the cap. Off camera, I painted the wig cap with purple acrylic paint. This is just in case any gaps show through the yarn. I'm pretty happy with how clean I got the part on this wig. I tend to accidentally leave too big of a gap or flip the weft too soon. I give the entire doll a coat of Mr. Super Clear. I'm going to color match all of the clay and then paint the head to cover the stains. You can see it in some shots, but the head is several shades lighter than the body. I think it must have gotten sun bleached. I mix up some acrylic paint and thin it with water. I use a flat synthetic bristle paintbrush to apply the paint. I found that this type of brush leaves the least streaks and texture. Since I'm working with watered down paint, it takes several layers to become opaque. You don't want to start a new layer of paint until the previous layer has dried. I speed up this process by using a hairdryer. Here's how she looks after color matching. I'm pretty proud of how close I got to the original plastic color. Off camera, I dip-dyed her in Rit Dye-More. I focused on her hands, feet, ears, joints, and the top of her head. I gave her a spray with some color shift paint, but another layer of MSC dulled it quite a bit. It is still quite visible on her hands and legs though. To start her face up, I'm sketching in the eye shapes and lips with a medium blue pencil. I want her face to be bright, cute, and kind of sly looking. So she'll have an open smile and nice round eyes. Working with the head attached was kind of cumbersome for this repaint. I do it often with smaller dolls, but this is the biggest doll I've worked on to date. I definitely want to do another frightfully tall doll in the future. Maybe I'll take a risk and remove the head next time. I filled the eye whites with gouache paint. I don't like following the same workflow every time. I just get bored too easily. I use a wet paintbrush and lift the pigment from my blue watercolor pencil to paint directly to the face. I don't want to spend as much time building up opacity, and the face already has a solid layer of paint. So I'm laying down smooth flat colors for me to work on top of on the next layer. I like this simple pastel face, but I feel like I really need to take advantage of the larger head and add more detail. From here on, I'm just working as usual. Slowly building up color with watercolor pencils, adding depth and shadows with soft pastels, and doing small opaque details with paint. The only major difference on this face is that I regularly blend my pencil strokes with a wet brush. I got these teeny tiny applicators months ago, but I lose them so much I've not had a proper chance to use them consistently. I definitely know which drawer I keep them in now, so I'm sure you'll be seeing them a lot in future face-ups. They were really useful for the gradients on the lips, brows, and in the eyes. I had dip-dyed her head blue, planning on painting a starry sky into the top half of her face. But I felt that the blue was too light and the stars would not show up very well. To remedy that, I'll be darkening the dyed region with pastels as I add new layers of sealant. At this stage, she looks pretty dirty, but I promise it gets better. I fill the teeth with white and add a few specular lights to the face. I draw on her lashes with a dark blue pencil. Then, using a white watercolor pencil, I sketch in the stars. I try to keep the shapes nice and varied. Some diamond-shaped, others twinkling crosses, a few bursts, and several small dots. To make the stars pop more, I give them a dark drop shadow using the same dark blue pencil that I had used for the lashes. I'm on a new layer of sealant, I think number 3, and I'm laying down a coat of bright blue soft pastels. This saved her face from looking muddy after using the black pastels. I do my best to avoid going over the newly drawn in stars. To keep her face looking fleshy, I softly brush in some purple pastels to her cheeks. I also add some to her nose and forehead. Then I go in and clean up the pastels with a sharp corner of an eraser. Pump up the highlights with more white pencil. I even added white highlights to the eyelashes this time. Then I went around the stars with a light blue to imply that they had a bit of a glow. Almost done. Just a few final painted details left. After a final coat of MSC, I used Sculpey gloss to add shine to her eyes, lips, and inside the ears. These are black 3D printed horns that I purchased and sprayed with Tester's Color Shift paint. To attach them, I used 10mm or 1cm neodymium magnets. I stick one set to the head with blue wall putty. These get covered by the wig. I am very pleased with how long I got this yarn on this wig, but I just couldn't see this character with anything other than a pixie cut. I'm sure lots of people will be sad to see it cut so short. In that case, check out any of my other videos. They all have long hair. I'm gonna give her 3D lashes. I did her face fully planning not to, but did a quick test with them and liked the way they looked. These are thinner than the ones I've been using lately. I think these are from the dollar store. I chose not to use the fluffier ones since I didn't want to overpower the drawn-on lashes. I think these work nicely with them as a team. To start her clothes, I'll be making a simple corset. I cover her torso in cling wrap to protect it. Then I tightly pull some stretchy cloth over it and pin the cloth in place with clips. I try to smooth out as many of the wrinkles as possible. After the fabric is where I want it, I apply layers of Elmer's Glue-All. This is just like making a wig cap. Stretch fabric held in place, and enough layers of glue to make the cloth hold its shape. I learned this technique from Worlds Within Worlds on Instagram. Here's how it looks when the glue has dried fully. And just like when wig making, you draw out the shape you want and trim down to size. Given the starry face and dusky hair colors, I decided to paint the corset in colors you might see in the sky right before dawn. I wet blend this so the color transitions are nice and smooth. Before I lace the corset, I want to attach her wings. This way I know how much space they'll be taking up on her back. But first, I want to pose them in a more interesting way. By default, they are straight out and flat. To do this, I heat the plastic with a heat gun, then dip it immediately into ice water. After a few passes, the wings hold the pose. A few years ago, I got rid of my couch, and instead of throwing it in the garbage, my family spent a few hours breaking it apart. This fake leather is one of the materials we salvaged from it. I've used it so many times in my customs. It has a bit of stretch, but isn't super thick. I thought it would make the perfect leathery wings. I hot glue the bones to the pleather and then roughly cut them out. I define the shape with a pencil, then clean it up with my little scissors. Then I take the nozzle of my glue gun while it is still quite hot and press it into the material, melting it. This lets me make some holes in the wings that won't continue to rip. I also went around the wing edges to reinforce them. I love that you can see the shape of the bones through the back of the wings. I want to give them a coat with the same color shift spray paint that I gave the horns. But in order to actually see the shift, the surface needs to first be painted black. I'm not worried about texture or brush strokes, so I don't dilute the acrylic paint at all. Since I messed up the size of the holes in the back, I'm going to permanently attach the wings instead. I pull the existing glue from my gun when it's mildly hot. I have some special colored glue sticks that I want to load in instead. This is going to be a tight, very hard to reach spot once the wings are in place. I want to avoid needing to paint it in this tiny space, so I'm using my black hot glue in order to hide the transition from wing to doll. Now I can finally move forward with the corset. I mark as evenly as I can the places that I want to run the ribbon through. Then, using a large needle, I sew a thin black ribbon into the corset. I sew this in the same pattern that I'll be lacing the corset up in later. I will have to pull the ribbon out in order to actually get the corset onto the doll, and the whole thing will need to be laced up again. Satin frays terribly, so I seal the ends of the ribbon with a lighter. I have some net fabric scraps that I want to turn into fishnet gloves for her. I clip this around her arms, then loop her fingers into the holes. I have to hand sew this onto the arms, then remove the gloves and turn them right side out. My youngest cat has been feeling very affectionate, or maybe just bored lately, so she was all over me when I was making this doll. After a short battle for my materials and a few rips, the gloves are done. I used masking tape and drafted a quick crop top pattern. This sadly won't be able to be reused for other dolls due to the chest mod. It kind of rides up anyway and needs refinement if I meant to reuse it, but with the corset in place, you can't really see the flaws. I used some stretchy lace to turn into a collar for the shirt. I sewed this off camera on my machine, and somehow it did not swallow the lace whole. I gave the back and collar Velcro closures. I plan on giving the doll a high-low skirt, and there's a decent chance that there will be plenty of panty shots with this skirt. And so I make her some simple panties to keep her decent. This pattern is actually reusable, and the result was exactly what I wanted. Will I ever need to make underwear for a big doll again? I do not know. Oh, and the material is crushed velvet. It made a big mess whenever I cut it out. I drafted up a pretty simple high-low skirt pattern out of an old ad. I had a lot of different fabrics I was playing with, but decided on this black satin and cotton galaxy print. I want the top of the skirt to be black and the galaxy to show through underneath, so it kind of has a lining. I've never done a lining before, and I'm honestly just using my best judgment for how to put it together. I put the fabric good side to good side, pinned, and sew around the outside. Then I turn it right side out by turning it out at the unfinished waist. There are deep folds and wrinkles from when the fabric was stored. I spritz the skirt with water and iron it with my hair straightener. This also makes the outer seam lay correctly and fixes the puffiness of the skirt. I sew on a simple waistband with Velcro closure off camera. Then, with the skirt on the doll, I clip a few folds. I want to hand sew these in place so that the skirt looks like it is draping properly. Then I painstakingly place chunky glitter and nail art rhinestones all over the skirt and corset. I want to thank my awesome viewers for advising me on how to make a jewel tool. It saved me so much work on this doll. I have these tiny pearls for nail art that I'll be adding to the blue parts of the wings. I had started gluing everything with Fabri-tac, but quickly switched to Elmer's glue. It took longer to dry, but it was more clear in the end. And I finished after about 2 hours-ish of gluing things on her. Everything other than the wings are fully dry here. I love how she sparkles. But she doesn't quite sparkle enough. Yet. These are glass beads that I've tried to arrange into a sunset-like gradient. I string them onto thread, starting with the white, which represents a star. Then I move onto gradually deeper, more blue colors. The strung beads are then hand-sewn into the bottom edge of the skirt. I repeat this all the way around, leaving about 4 centimeters in between the beads. Here's how it looks. I had intended to make full shoes, but completely ran out of time. So instead, I'll be decorating her feet with black ribbon. I twist this up the leg, starting from the arch of the foot, then tie it off in a bow. And just like the ribbon from the skirt, I seal the ends with a lighter. This really wasn't necessary to show, but I like the way the flame looks. And with that, she's done. This is my first doll that is bigger than 1/6 scale, and I was so intimidated. But in the end, I'm pretty satisfied with her. I think she really embodies the feeling of a naughty, bored imp. I imagine she likes to play tricks on humans who have trouble sleeping. Her favorite hobby is probably hiding your coffee. I decided to name her Dusk. Thank you so much for watching. If you have time, please check out my collaborators videos as well. Links are below. I'll see you next time.